who is the wife of Kwei, the mother of Fofo and Baby T and other 2 children. She is a very irresponsible woman. Her irresponsibility as a result of poverty, as a result of ignorance. Because if she is aware of the fact that one can decide to give birth to a child or 2, if that is what your financial muscle is able to carry, then why would she go as far as giving birth to about 6 children in total in that work? And she doesn't have enough financial muscle to bear the responsibility. So out of ignorance, she falls into giving birth to many children, and she doesn't have the wherewithal to take care of them. The next character is Nayomo. Nayomo is the oldest of all the characters in that war. In fact, she is a repository of the history of the entire event in that war. The repository of everything that happens. Through Nayomo, we get to know that Masuru's mother places a curse on the man who got her pregnant and leaves her and abandons her. And it is that cause that Masuru believes is affecting her life and does not wish to budge. The next character is Cabrini. Cabrini is a very important character in that work. In fact, the writer consciously places the events happening in Cabrini's house. Cabrini is married to Adede. Adede is the husband of Cabrini. So all the events happening in the home of Cabrini are placed along the events happening in the home of Masuru. While in the home of Masuru, the children are not well taken care of, they drop out of school, they don't eat well. In the house of Cabrini, the 3 children eat well, go to good school, and are taken care of by their mother, by their parents. So the author, in a way, tries to explain what a family should be and should not be. A family should be what we find in the home of Cabrini, and a family should not be what we find in the home of Masuru. The next other character is Poison, a very dangerous character. Yes, just like his name implies, Poison. He leaves his home at the age of 8, and by the age of 15, he had actually become a pimp, arranging girls for people to sleep with and getting his proceeds from so doing. And of course, he is responsible for the death of Baby T. The next other character is Baby T, the character we never get to meet. But we meet her using, the writer brings her to our attention using the technique of flashback. It is around her, around the discovery of the mystery of her death, that the story is built. The next character is Kwei, who is the first husband of Masuru. And that is it for characterization. The next is language and style. The first is the use of substandard English and pidgin. We remember the fellow in Amadako's Faceless who called into Harvest FM station to make a comment about the death of Baby T when it was brought on air. This fellow speaks in pidgin English language, and the author does so to actually explain the caller's social status. The next is the device of mystery. This style of the use of device of mystery is peculiar to detective novel. And of course, we see that in Amadako's Faceless. The story is built around the mystery surrounding the death of Baby T. And whatever the writer does around the story, it's an effort meant to unravel who is behind the death of little Baby T. The next is the narrative technique, omniscient point of view. That's equally a style. Omniscient point of view, some others refer to it as a third person point of view. This is a technique where the writer writes like a god who knows all there is to know about the work of art, and even peruses into the heart of the characters to tell us, the readers, both their thoughts and intentions, even their dreams. So we see a writer who imposes herself or himself on the work and begins to tell us what happens in the work of art, especially in this one. Of course, That's different from the first person narrative technique, where we have the character telling us the story. That's, he or she is part of the story and he relays it to you, the reader. But that's not the case in the omniscient point of view. The next technique is contrast. I think I briefly made reference to this technique of contrast as used by Amadako. Now, she achieves this technique by placing side by side two families. That's the family of Masuru and the family of Cabrini. Don't forget I told you that Cabrini is a member of a non-governmental organization established by Diana, that is D-I-N-A. She is the founder of the NGO called Mute. Of course, she has other workers like Vicky. So, Cabrini is a member of this non-governmental organization, and she has a family married to Adede, and she has 3 children. So the author places the family of Cabrini alongside the family of Masuru. And the reader is meant to see what is happening in these two families and decide for him or herself which family is best to emulate. And of course, through authorial intuition, the writer actually begs us to take side with the family of Cabrini as what a family is supposed to be. So these are the techniques employed by Amadako in the writing of this prose work, Faceless. Right now, we are going to focus on poetry. So we start with the title, Introduction to Poetry. First of all, we want to ask the question, what is poetry? Poetry refers in totality to the deployment of certain devices, such as figures of speech, rhyme, and rhythm, etc., in a body of words. Of course, in order to express an idea in a way that what is said attracts attention because of the peculiar way it is said. So poetry is interested in the way words are used to express the thoughts and intention of the poet or the poetess, in the case of a female writer. Of course, one thing very important about poetry is that words are oftentimes used unconventionally, bringing about a freshness, a newness to the entire body of work. So poetry is different from other genres of literature because it is written in lines, otherwise known as foot or stanzas. And poetry actually must embody the use of figures of speech, use of devices which are meant to beautify the work. Now, to be able to explain some of these things about poetry, some of the ideas we get to understand about poetry, we shall be making use of one poem. That poem would be William Shakespeare's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day. That's the poem we're going to be using to explain the concept of poetry. Don't forget that we can even define poetry has got to do with a collection, a body of poems. Now, talking about poem itself, according to William Wordsworth, poem is defined as overflowing emotion, recaptured in tranquility. That's William Wordsworth's definition of poem. Now, let's come to the background of William Shakespeare's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? Of course, that poem is the 18th sonnet of William Shakespeare. Out of the 154 sonnets Shakespeare wrote, this is the 18th of them. And the poem was published in the year 1609. That's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day. We shall be looking into this poem. It's a 14-line poem. That's, since it's a sonnet, it's a poem of 14 lines. It's a sonnet. I'm sure you already know that. Okay. Now we shall be looking into this poem. We shall read the poem. Okay. Of course, you know a typical sonnet is written in sextate octave. That's 6 lines for the first stanza, then 8 lines for the second stanza. That's sextate rather, an octave. But we shall be looking at Shakespeare's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day in 3 stanzas, not in 2 stanzas now, in 3 stanzas, of course, for the sake of convenience. So we shall be taking them line for line. First of all, the first thing we shall be doing in this class right now is to read the poem from the beginning to the end. We shall now come back to make analysis, that's line by line analysis, and of course get other issues embodied in the poem. Now let's start with the first line with the first stanza of the poem. Okay, it goes this way. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough wind do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaves had all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of the heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or by nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that beauty. I take that line again. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Now, this is the poem, 14 lines. The next issue we shall be engaging now is the subject matter. Don't forget that the subject matter of a work of art is different from the theme of the work of art. Now, let me give you an explanation of the difference between the theme and the subject matter. The subject matter can be compared to a container, a crucible, as it were, and the content of such container is regarded as the theme. I'm sure you understand that. So, the subject matter is the story as it is told, the issues in the work, while whatever one is able to decipher from the issues in the work forms the theme. And oftentimes, there is only one very prominent theme in the work of art, in this case in a poem. And of course, there are other sub-themes. But now, we are going to be talking about the subject matter. The subject matter of Shakespeare's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day is the relationship between the poetic persona and an unnamed individual. Now, we do not know exactly who Shakespeare was writing. We do not know if Shakespeare, that's the poet persona. Let's say the poet persona. We do not know who the poet persona was actually talking to, because the gender of the respondent was not mentioned. So we guess that Shakespeare actually is referring to a lover in that work of art. But first of all, now let's go to the stanza by stanza analysis. In the first line, we have, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Of course, we know that line, that first line harbors rhetorical question. Of course, you know, rhetorical questions are questions that do not demand answers. They are meant for emphasis. So the poet persona says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Of course, you know that summer is one of the seasons in Europe. And of course, it's a very beautiful, sunny, interesting season. So the poet begins to wonder if he should compare the lover to a summer's day. Now he answers it. Thou, in the second line, thou art more lovely and more temperate, which means the lover or the respondent, when compared to a summer's day, that the lover is better than the summer. Remember, I just described the summer as a very beautiful season. The season everyone often looks forward to. Now, the poet persona says that the lover is more temperate than the summer's day, which means that the lover, if the lover were to be a season, that it is more temperate than the season of summer. That's beautiful, and of course a little hyperbolic. In the third line, we have, rough wind do shake the darling buds of May. And some, now, even the buds of some beautiful flowers fall off because of the impact of rough wind. And that is nature. And the fourth line says, and summer's leaves had all too short a date. Which means summer comes today, and before very long it passes away like a season. What about the sun? The poet says about the sun, sometime too hot the eye of the heaven shine. The eye of the heaven is a metaphor for the sun. Now, sometimes the sun shines very hot that we don't appreciate it anymore. Then, the next line says that in the second stanza, and often is its gold complexion dimmed. Of course, when the gold complexion of the sun dims, we get the night, which means even the sun is not